All right, so we're in the growth section and in the mindset part. And what I wanted to do is give you a bit of a background first in terms of the mind and some of the things that we might talk about. We'll get into topics like meditation and mindfulness, growth mindset, doing the work, shifting your perspectives, and other topics of that nature. So, in terms of background, I would like to kind of walk you through the brain, right? In biology, there are basically three major parts of the brain. So you have the brain stem, which is kind of the reptilian brain, and it was the oldest part of the brain and really responsible for our survival. It had the flight or fight mechanism in there, and within there, it allowed our ancestors to kind of stay alive. Above that became the mammalian brain, where things like the amygdala come to play, and that's an important structure that we might talk about in terms of emotions and feeling. And what that part of the brain did was it allowed us with a little bit more foresight, right? So the reptilian brain was a little bit fight and flight, is very reactive, right? The emotions allowed us to predict a little bit more. It allowed us to feel happy, to kind of reinforce behavior, sad, to counteract behavior, become angry in order to stimulate some of our physiological responses to get ready to fight. So most emotions are really just a version of fight or flight, or ones to continue to propagate, procreate, and continue to survive, right? So happiness, when we feel good, that typically meant that we were being nourished, we were procreating, or we were doing things that would be beneficial to our survival. And things like being angry was we were ready to fight, and sadness and anxiety and stuff like that was, well, we have to be careful, and we might have to flee and get ready so we can survive. And the newest part of our brain, the neocortex, which is often called the human brain, is where we do our rational thinking. It allows us to do math problems, think about our future and plan. And all the great advances in civilization are because of that area of the brain. Now, the unfortunate thing is that in order for you to get to that rational part of the brain, you have to go through those other sections. So oftentimes we act irrationally because we haven't got past that mammalian, the middle part of the brain, where we get kind of lost in our emotions and things like that. Part of when we're dealing with kind of things like mental health and mental wellness, we have to get past those emotions and address them because emotions are useful. They were there for a reason. They help keep us alive. Emotions are information. And the challenge with a lot of us is what we do is we bottle them up. We don't address them. We put them away, or we react to them in a negative way. But what we are really should be doing is to feel the emotions and understand, okay, why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling angry? Why am I feeling hurt? Why am I feeling whatever it is? And what do I want to do about it? How do I address that? Because oftentimes those emotions resurface when we really haven't learned from it, right? Our brain has evolved to help us, right? So having those emotions is something that we need, but we need to work with them in the right way. And what I encourage folks to think about is their brain is and themselves is a little bit like a computer, right? Your biology, your physiology is kind of like the hardware, right? And your mindset and all the thoughts that you have is a little bit like your software. But we don't have like mice or keyboards or touchscreens or anything. We have senses. We have our sight, we have our hearing, we have our taste, we have our touch, and those become our inputs. And our inputs are really what dictate how our software starts behaving, right? So if we feel a lot of those kind of negative emotions throughout our lives based on our inputs, then that's what carries along with us. If we feel them as positive, then that's what carries there. Now, the interesting thing is those inputs are neither good nor bad. Oftentimes, it's just our perception, our thoughts on whether it's good or bad that dictates whether it's so, right? So there's a author, Viktor Frankl, which he wrote the Man's Search for Meaning, and he went through kind of one of the Nazi concentration camps, and within that horrendous experience, he was still able to find meaning, and he actually found that a lot of people who survived that ordeal were ones that had a purpose, had some meaning in there. And one quote that he often is quoted as saying is, between stimulus and response, there is a gap. And within that gap lives all of man's freedoms, or something like that, paraphrased roughly. But basically, something happens, right? Your senses get triggered. You see something, you hear something, you feel something. Oftentimes, it's neither good nor bad. It's your interpretation of it that dictates so. So it's your response to it. Now, oftentimes, people actually don't respond. They just react. So maybe that fight or flight mechanism overrides it. That amygdala actually kind of hijacks your emotions and says, okay, we need to run away from this. We need to get angry about this. We need to be defensive about this comment that this person just said. And we react. Whereas if we kind of took a look at that statement, took a look at that stimulus and said, oh, they didn't do anything significant. It really doesn't bother me. So why should I react in an overly aggressive way or whatever it is, right? So oftentimes the actions that we have are really reactions versus responses, right? So that gap that Viktor Frankl talks about is one thing that ideally we want to expand. And if we use things like mindfulness, like meditation, then that gap expands because we're not just automatically going through this habit of getting angry or upset or sad or whatever it is. We can actually pause and think, oh, okay, is that really true? Is that something that I need to deal with? Is that some input that I need to learn from? And if it is, okay, let me learn from it. And if it's not and it's irrelevant, then why even bother continuing and associating with that thought, right? So I encourage folks to adopt some growth tactics such as mindset and mindfulness. And you can read books such as The Power of Now or A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And he talks about being in the present and talks about things like the ego and things like that in order to be at peace with your emotions and those negative thoughts that are in there. Also to take a look at stuff like The Work from Byron Katie, and she has a whole bunch of exercises that you can do in order to address some of the negative emotions, negative thoughts, because really it's not the event or whatever happened that is good or bad. It's your interpretation, your perspective of it, your thoughts of it that is what makes it bad or not. So oftentimes it's that perspective that you take that makes it so or not. And whether you think that's the case or not, well, that is what it is. And once you come to grips and really understand that and experience it, then you'll find that a lot of your challenges, your worries, your anxieties and stuff will change, right? In the sense that you probably won't have them as much, or at least in the same intensity, because you'll realize, oh, it's just a thought that I'm thinking. And one thing that I encourage you to adopt is a growth mindset. So Dr. Carol Dweck is a researcher who published a book called Mindset that really popularized having a growth mindset. And really it's counter to the fixed mindset, which a lot of people have, where they think, okay, I'm either smart or I'm not. I'm either artistic or I'm not. I'm either good or I'm not. Whereas a growth mindset says, well, oftentimes you're not good yet. You haven't learned how to do whatever it is yet. Now, there's certain physical limitations in terms of if you're shorter, it's going to be harder for you to become like a basketball player. But cognitively, pretty much anything that any human has ever done, you could probably do, right? In terms of like physics or things like Albert Einstein did, you could, if you wanted to spend the time, develop those types of things. Physically, it might be a little bit more challenging, but cognitively, you can. Being motivated and driven, like any of the high-achieving humans in history, you could be like that if you wanted, if you decide to adopt that growth mindset. And as the first part of that growth mindset is what I would call choice, right? You have to make the choice. Do you want to grow? Do you want to get better? Or do you want to continue living how you lived, right? And it is your choice. You have the choice in order to do that. Some people think that they don't, right? And oftentimes those limitations become excuses, and they hold us back in terms of achieving what we truly can. There's a quote that comes to mind: "He who thinks he can and he who thinks he can't is probably right." So if you're the person who thinks that you can, then you will probably achieve. If you think you can't, then that's what you'll probably achieve. So if I were you, I choose the can. And if it doesn't happen, at least I gave it a shot, right? And if you think can't, it might happen, but probably not. So having your perspective as, is it a limitation or is it an opportunity? Those are types of things that can be really transformative for you. Even adopting a sense of positivity, right? Not in the sense that, oh, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to turn out, and everything's going to be great, but more of, okay, what can I do about it, right? So this thing happened, right? That stimulus happened. And what is my response? Not what's my reaction to it. What is my response to it? What am I going to do about it? What have I learned from it so that it doesn't happen again? What are the things that I can do in order to progress to the next step? So it's often not a plan A and a plan B. It's a plan A and a plan A2, A3, A4, A5, where you keep on trying. Okay, if I can't do it this way, let me try this way. Let me try this way. Let me try this way. And let's get past that obstacle, that hurdle, and see if there's different ways of doing that. So I encourage you to adopt those types of mindsets where, one, you're focusing on your thoughts, right, and thinking whether they're true. So if you look at the work by Byron Katie and seeing whether it's true, taking a look at positivity, so the work of Dr. Martin Seligman for a lot of the things on positive psychology, or Sean Achor and things like that, then a lot of those books could be transformative in terms of your perspective and mindset. And when you really have a great mindset and a rock solid one, which takes practice, it's not an automatic switch that turns on. It's something that every day you have to get through, right? There's another author, Dr. Daniel Amen, who talks about in psychology, like ants, right? And they're not ants, the creepy crawlies. They're ants as in automatic negative thoughts. So a lot of the times we have these negative thoughts in our brain, and we limit ourselves as a result of those ants. But if we can start scraping away those ants through that growth mindset, through doing the work and what have you, then we'll find that we're unlimiting ourselves, and we are taking away obstacles, and we're taking advantage of all of those opportunities. And the reason that we have those ants is it allowed us to survive, right? Being anxious about something, all those negative things that happen, prevented us from being eaten by lions, right? From being mauled by a saber-toothed tiger, or whatever it is that our ancestors had to deal with. But the challenge is, in today's society, we really don't have those same dangers, those same fears that we need. Those fears are not really as real as they used to be. Now, one of the things is that people often question when I say this is I say that fear is imagined, right? And oftentimes people confuse fear with danger, right? Danger is real. It's absolutely, right? If someone is holding a knife and pointing at you, then that's pretty dangerous, right? But if that person is a chef that's ready to cut your next meal, well, that's probably not as dangerous as if it was like a mugger in an alley or something like that, right? So oftentimes fear it becomes a limiting part of our psychology, whereas we confuse that with danger. And oftentimes they're not the same thing. When there's real and ever-present danger, we need to be careful, right? So you want to monitor that fear, but oftentimes that danger really isn't there. So the fact that you go in front of a group of people and don't make the most amazing speech, and it was kind of like, okay, well, there's really no danger in that, right? The fear is definitely there, but the danger is not there. You're not going to die. You're not going to be kicked out of the tribe, probably, well, depending on the type of talk that you're going to give. But that danger really isn't there. But you can use that danger and use that fear. And what that fear will often indicate is where you care, areas where you actually feel is important. So what you can do is turn that fear, turn that anxiety into excitement, turn it into, okay, let me practice, let me do all the best things that I can in order to make sure that I do my best in this given endeavor. So turning that fear and confirming whether or not it's danger, and if that danger is there, seeing if you can flip that fear into excitement as something that you care enough about to want to do well in. Because if you didn't care, if you weren't fearful, then you probably didn't care about it, right? So just being aware of those types of perspectives. So getting your mindset straight is a process. It is a practice, oftentimes a daily practice. But if you can get through it, and myself, I'm working through it myself, but every day I get a little bit better and better and better. And when you can adopt those growth mindset activities, then I'll also take the perspectives of positivity and opportunity, then you'll find that you're well on your way to career success. So that's a little bit on mindset, and we'll give you some like tips and tricks later on in order to help you further in developing a lot of that resilience and getting over stress and anxiety and things like that.